noticed how I was so thirsty. I wanted a drop of water, just one drop, and there wasn't any water. I noticed there was no water anywhere. The atmosphere, the air is so dry because there's no humidity. There's no water in hell. So you're so thirsty, just one drop of water would be so wonderful to have, but you don't get it. And there's scriptures all about that too, about thirst. Luke 16:23 and Zechariah 9:11. But about this time, I was managed to crawl out of this cell. There actually were 4 demons in the cell, but I didn't see the other 2. I knew there were 4, and that they were assigned to me to torture and torment me forever. For as long as you're in hell, they would be there to torture you. They were assigned. And then I was in a holding cell of some kind. I wasn't in the permanent place that I would be, but just this temporary place. And I just didn't see the other 2. It got dark after about 30 seconds. That's all it was light for. And then the light went out. It was as if the Lord left. But he was there long enough for me to see the sight. So when it went dark, it was so dark. And it was a darkness like you can't even imagine. And there's a scripture in Exodus 10:21 says that when the plagues on Egypt, says that darkness which may be felt, it says. And it was actually, it's hard to describe a darkness like this, but it's so eerie and heavy. And that's what I thought, oh, I can't even. So I got out, and then there was, looking this direction, there was light enough to see the skyline, only because 10 miles away from me was this pit of fire. Huge pit, and it was 3 miles across, this pit, 10 miles away. And it was raging, just raging flames, hundreds of feet in the air. So it lit up the skyline enough to be able to see. And I looked, and that's when I really realized, I'm in hell. I'm in hell. And I looked around, and it was all brown, dead, desolate. Nothing of any life, of any kind. Not a green leaf, not a green blade of grass. Nothing alive. I thought, this is just stone, dead, and the air was filled with smoke. Horrible, putrid, ugly, way worse than LA smog that you've heard about. It was terrible. And the thirst, though, I was so thirsty. And you can't breathe. There's not enough air in hell. You just can't breathe. And so the whole time, I'll try to, this is how you were in hell. I was like this going, just like that, trying to get one breath, but you don't get to the privilege of getting a breath of air to breathe. So you're tormented with that. And the air smells so bad anyway, you don't want to breathe it. The smell of the demons is so putrid and foul, like the scripture says that Jesus cast out the foul spirits. Yeah. That foul says that foul means putrid, rotten, disgusting. It's way worse than anything you've ever smelled on earth. Any open sewer or anything like that. Just imagine, take that times 1,000 and put it up to your nose and just breathe that. And it was mixed with the smell of brimstone and sulfur, like a sulfur smell, horrible sulfur, and also burning flesh. I've never smelled burning flesh, but I knew that that's what it was, burning flesh. Horrible, gross smell. So you didn't want to breathe anyway, but yet you couldn't get enough air. So you're denied all that. And the screams, it was so loud in hell, because there was millions of people there, and I knew there was millions in other cells, and in pits of fire, and over in that lake of fire. And they were all screaming at the top of their lungs. So if you've ever been around a screaming person, just one, it's like, it grates you, to hear screams. Well, just take that times millions. It's so loud, deafening, you want to cover your ears and you want to get away from it, but you can't get away from it. So you get no peace of mind. You're just tormented with that. And there's scriptures all about that, all the Bible, about the fear and all that. There's no peace. It says, there is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. Isaiah 57:21. You want to get away from this noise and be at peace, but you don't get to enjoy that. Like we like to go home at night and be quiet and be, you don't get that privilege. I wanted to talk to a human being. Like, where are we? What is going on? But you don't get that privilege either. You don't get to commune with any people. You're denied that. They're kept away from you. So you only have the interaction of the demons. You don't get the privilege of talking to a human like we get together in fellowship. And how nice it is to fellowship with people. We like to do that. You can't do that either. And you also are exhausted. I was like, if you've ever stayed up for nights studying for something, or you had to work and you're just completely gone, if you ever felt that way, we'll take that again times 1,000. You're totally exhausted, but you need to sleep, just like you would here. And you don't get to ever sleep. So that alone, you should just die from that. All these things should kill you. The fear that comes over you in this place is so overwhelming, because here, you know, God's presence is on the earth. And even if you're in a scary situation, God's presence is here. There's no, God's presence isn't there. And it says perfect love casts out fear. There's no love in hell at all. So the fear totally dominates the place. And you're petrified, terrified, traumatized, everything at once. Because you know that you're subject to these demons, and you're going to undergo all this torture and torment. They drugged me back into the cell and did other gross tortures, which I don't even like to talk about. Just every imaginable gross thing you can even dream of, they would do to you. And they enjoyed it. It was as if they had, I don't know if pleasure is the right word, but they were fulfilling something in them. They enjoyed hurting you. And I wanted desperately to get out of the cell. And about this time, they put me down on the floor, and each of them grabbed an arm and a leg and was going to rip my legs and arms off. And I was just bracing for this, and right then something grabbed me out of the cell. And I was placed over next to the fire. Not in it, but maybe a couple 100 feet away from it, but near that huge inferno of fire. And again, I knew how far it was. I don't know how you know, but you just know, like I said, it was 10 miles away. I also knew that I was almost 4,000 miles deep into the earth. I knew that. And because there's a lot of scriptures on hell being in the center of the earth. And you just knew. And I knew my wife was up on the earth, sleeping. And that this was the part that really bothered me a lot. I could never get to her again, ever. I knew that I would never get out of this place. And it's like here, you can't quite grasp eternity. You can't get a hold of it. It's like forever. What is that? Well, in hell, you totally grasp eternity. You understand it. You can feel it. You know it. And you know you're there, and you will never, ever get out of this place. That's the feeling, okay? Never. And I knew that I could never get to my wife. And that alone, that thought bothered me a lot, because, you know, I just said this to her before, but if anything ever happened in California, if we were ever separated and there was an earthquake or something, I told her, I'll find a way to get to you. I'll get there. I don't care what it takes, I'll get to you. And I couldn't get to her. I just couldn't get to her. I could never see her again. And it bothered me so much to have to feel that. And I thought, she doesn't even know where I'm at. She doesn't even know I'm here. How am I going to ever tell her? For eternity? It's just that you can't even live with that thought alone, just to be there forever. You're naked in hell too. That's just another shame thing, you know, just the whole, you don't have any clothes. And the humbling thing is, you know, God made us as human beings the best creatures that He's designed as humans. He's made us the top of creation. And in hell, these demons have become the lowest form of life that there is. And they rule over you. It's so humiliating to have these creatures run your life. And you think, you know, you study all your life, you go to school, you prepare yourself, you try to better yourself in every way. And then these creatures, that they had a 0 IQ. Okay, that's what I felt. They had a 0 IQ. All they knew was torture and hatred. That's all. There wasn't any mercy. They don't know anything about that. And I thought, these ignorant creatures are going to run my life? To live with that alone is horrible. And it says in Isaiah 5:14, therefore hell hath enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure, and the mighty man shall be humbled. Oh. So I don't care how strong you are as a guy and think you're macho or something. You're nothing in hell. You're hopelessly lost forever. I knew there were different levels of torments and levels of tortures. That there were people in worse places than I was in. And there's a lot of scriptures on that, being in different levels. Jesus said that ye shall receive the greater damnation. and you shall go to the lowest hell. There's a lot of scriptures that Sodom and Gomorrah, that it would be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city that Jesus was talking to. So if it's more tolerable, in other words, it would be less degree of severity of punishment for Sodom and Gomorrah. So there are different levels and people in worse positions, but any of the positions are awful. Anywhere. The whole place is horrible. It's just here we enjoy all the nice things. We get to breathe the fresh air and the sunshine and all the things we take for granted. And many people, they don't want to have anything to do with God, but they enjoy all these nice things. They don't realize that if you take God out of the situation, remove God, the good goes with him. See, all good things, in James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift comes from above. So when you remove God, the good gifts go with him. And hell there's no presence of the Lord there at all. So everything we enjoy here, sleep and quietness and fellowship and food and comfort, temperature, everything, you don't have any of that there. You're completely denied all those things, and you have to put up with it forever. I mean, there's no way out of this place. And, I mean, that's just hard to imagine. And you are in the center of the earth. There's a lot of scriptures that refer to hell being in the center of the earth. And it says in Ephesians 4:9, Jesus descended into the lower parts of the earth. Numbers 16:32 talks about, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods, they and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And it goes on and on. There's one scripture that talks about the bottomless pit. And I like Missler pointed this out. He said, the only place where there's no bottom, think about where is there no bottom? It has to be the center point of the earth. Because from there, all directions are up. So, it's interesting. That's where it's at. And the levels, again, all the different levels. About this time, when I was standing alongside the tunnel, I was below this cavern, like a round cave cavern type thing. And I looked up and it got dark, pitch black, but down here it was lit enough because of the fire. I was next to this fire, flames. And I could hear all the millions of people screaming in the fire, begging to get out. And I knew they were going to drag me in there too. And I didn't want to go in there. That would be worse. It was already hot enough. But in there, to be burned and to continually burn, to feel all that, I didn't want to go through that. But all around this, the walls of this cavern were all kinds of demons. Every shape and size of demon were like, and I looked around and it was as if they were chained to the walls. I didn't see the chains, but I felt they were attached or chained to the walls, which didn't make sense, but there are scriptures on that too. But they were all different sizes and shapes. There were, again, big ones like 12 and 13 feet. There were ones the size of bears. There were giant rats. Everything you hate. Giant rats, like as big as dogs, rats. There were spiders, huge spiders. There were small ones, and there were huge ones, like as big as this, like here. Just huge spiders. And thousands of them. They were everywhere, all over this place. And they all had one thing in common. They hated man. I knew they hated. They had enough knowledge to know that they hated man, and they wanted to torment us. All of them. And fortunately, they didn't get to me. They were all there, and I was looking at them. There were snakes of all sizes and shapes. Gross, horrible snakes. Big ones. There were snakes. There was one snake, and I